Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Joel, you got rich buying rental properties. Can you tell us how you did it?
Well, my philosophy ended up being what you would look back and say, gosh, that's kind of just the old school get rich slow program, because I did start in 1978 after reading, like Robert Allen books and that sort of stuff. And it just evolved that way with the way I was just buying rentals and holding on to them and increasing the cash flow and increasing the equity and never selling them. So now looking back, that's what you'd have to call it, is the old school get rich slow program.
On the podcast today, we're going to find out exactly how he did it. Joining us on the show today from Erie, Pennsylvania is Joel Miller. We'll take a really quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll meet Joel. The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified. And I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. When I'm doing research to buy a new rental property, there's a lot of different websites, apps, and then a spreadsheet that I use to do my analysis. It's really kind of a convoluted process. Well, there's a much easier way. There's an app called Ask Rick. That's RIC for Rental Income Calculator. Ask Rick makes it really easy to find and analyze rental properties. You can see all the properties for sale in an area. If something looks good, you can press one button. It'll analyze the property for you. It'll figure out the rent amount. It'll figure out your mortgage payment, all your expenses, and give you your cash flow. If you're ready to move forward, you can make an offer right there on the app, or you can send the information over to your realtor to do some more investigation into the property. You can try it out for free right now. Just search for Ask Rick. That's RIC, Ask Rick in the App Store, or go to justascrick.com. That's justascrick.com. The team at Just Ask Rick is constantly working on making the app better. They just released an update to make the map load faster, and you can now schedule a tour by sending a calendar invite right in the app. If you tried it out before, you might want to give it another shot. If you haven't tried it yet, start your free trial today at justascrick.com. Let's start with where you are today. Tell me about your rental portfolio.
Well, I'm strictly involved with residential rentals, and we have things from single-family homes to row homes, which are sort of single-family, where you might have a building that has 4 or 6 actual units in that building that are all deeded separately, and I might own one in that whole building, so it kind of, that's sort of a single family home, but we have a bunch of those all together in one neighborhood. It's like 13 of them within a block of each other, that it's sort of like, one step removed from having an apartment complex where you can go drive up and park in the parking lot and deal with things at a variety of different units all from one spot. Wow. Is sort of the next best thing to that. And we have some 2 units and 3 units, and have real nice 4-unit 3-bedroom place that is modern construction in real good neighborhood. I consider it a B-class property, and we have like this little 8-unit apartment complex with 2 4-unit buildings on a corner with its own parking area behind the 2 buildings, and those are B-class properties, and so that's the sort of thing that we've specialized in. And I say we, I mean my wife and I.
So it sounds like you started with C-class properties, and then you moved into B-class properties as you got more money and more experience. Am I right in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then there's nothing wrong with that because the B or the C class properties will cash flow more, and maybe that's what you need more of when you're younger in the business and you have more time and energy to put into those sort of properties. My take on it is that you can go from one spectrum with, say, D-class properties to A-class properties, and the difference being the D-class are going to cash flow like crazy, but you're going to have more turnover. They're going to most likely be older properties and require more maintenance, and they're not going to be in as good a neighborhoods that will also possibly cause you some problems. And then the A class are going to be in, better neighborhoods or areas, and modern construction and more stable tenants, and hence less management. But everybody wants those, so you pay more, so the cash flow is less there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do something in the middle to get started, that's probably more sensible.
Right. So once you had your basic needs covered with the C-class properties, did you move into B-class properties because they were going to be less hassle, and maybe you're giving up some cash flow, but it's just easy?
Yeah, that's my take on it. I've seen guys try to turn over C-class properties to third-party management. Like, for example, in that neighborhood where I have the row homes, there are a number of landlords in there. Most of us manage our own properties, but in the instances where the management was turned over to a third party, because the owner just didn't really want to deal with them. Maybe they bought them in their IRA or something like that, and they just wanted to, just say that they owned them. The properties were never as well kept. The tenants were never as good, and they didn't stay as long. It was just I don't think third-party management companies do well with C-class or certainly D-class properties, just because the management companies mainly want to just find you new tenants and collect your rent and send you your portion of it, and have a maintenance guy do things that the tenants actually report.
Right.
But, with those sort of properties, you have to be involved as an owner to look for things that need to be done to keep up that property, both interior and exterior.
It's interesting because so many people bash property managers and say that property managers aren't good. But, I wonder if it's really just the properties that aren't good.
Well, sure. I think if I had a property management company myself, and I can say that this is also the desire of those that are my friends that are property management, or they do own property management companies. They don't have as their business model to go out and try to manage a bunch of C properties and D properties.
Right. Right.
Because it's much more labor intensive to them to do it right.
Right.
And they would much rather be involved with managing apartment complexes and maybe a group of nicer but smaller B-class properties,
right? And
for an owner or a client, as opposed to properties that are turning over tenants a little more quickly and require more of an eye to figure out what needs to be done in a property in between tenants, or even on a seasonal basis, like even checking for damage, like I do every winter. In April we walk around the outside of all the properties and just make a list of if there's been any damage from the winter, or the things that we're going to do that summer.
Right. Yeah. Most management companies aren't going to get that involved. They're going to be way more reactive.
Right. Now, that's the key. Is they're reactive,
right? Now, a big part of building wealth through rental properties, I believe in your case, has been paying off a lot of your properties. Am I right that is that really when you felt rich, was when you got rid of those mortgages?
Well, naturally, that increases your cash flow quite a bit when you don't have the mortgage anymore to pay. And also, on the balance sheet, you've got the full value of the property not offset by the amount of anything owed against it. And, that can make you feel rich. But, in our case, what it meant was that there was just more money that would be around that could be used to acquire other properties.
Right. So how did you do it? How did you get those properties paid off?
Well, from their own cash flow. I wasn't adding any of my own money. I tell the story that I bought my first place in 1978. I think it was for $25,000. I managed to put just like $2,500 down with a savings and loan. Being the lender that I was a customer of, savings account for my paper route, going back that far. And I tell the story that's probably about the last money of my own that I put into real estate. And then I refinanced that property a couple of years later and got that money back. So I don't actually have any of my own money invested in real estate.
Wow. So it's been all the rent money that you've just taken that rent money, paid the mortgages, whatever you have left over when you get a chunk, you would send that money in and pay those mortgages down?
Well, I have to say that I never really did the thing where you just pay extra on an existing amortized loan and get it paid faster. I just would pay what was required on it, and then if I was going to pay them off, I just paid off all one time.
Okay.
Either by refinancing it or I had a chunk of money saved up from the operation of the properties, and I didn't have otherwise some sort of a deal to put it into. I figure, why pay the interest on something?
Right. So the way that you did it is you would use mortgages to buy the properties, but then you were getting them paid off. Now, a lot of people want to have their properties paid off, but they want to save money and buy with cash. Would you be where you are today if you had gone that way?
Oh, absolutely not. I would never recommend saving up money to pay 100% for a property, because it's going to really take a long time to do that, and then you're not really going to be able to acquire too many properties. You have to use leverage.
Yeah,
other people's money somehow, either from financial institution when you put some money down, or a third-party lender, like hard money lender of some sort, or if you're having the seller finance it, it's the same thing. It's you're using the seller turns into a bank. You're using their money, and so as I progressed after that first property, I was always able to either get seller financing or somehow buy with no money down. And then, like I said, I never would take all the money out either, and I think that's important for anybody starting out. Don't figure that you're just going to withdraw all your money from the profits of operating your rental. You have to let cash accumulate, not only for surprises like certain expenses that are a surprise, but also for planned things like that you don't do very often, like say put on a new roof or something like that. You don't want to get to the part where you need a new roof all of a sudden, and you have no money to do that.
Right.
But also to accumulate money to buy other properties, and so that's important. Don't take all your money out.
So if somebody wants to get to where you are today, would you recommend that they first, I guess like the first step would be to acquire multiple properties and then to work on getting those paid off? Like, do you think paying off rental properties is really kind of the key to building wealth?
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you are trying to really build your portfolio, you're going to tie your hands if your whole objective is to just pay off properties. You have to be willing to leverage. You see, I'm talking to you now 42 and a half years later in the business, where now, where I'm not really interested in acquiring more properties that require more time, I want to enjoy the cash flow that I have from having properties that have been paid off.
Right.
But if I would have insisted on not having any mortgages on properties early on, I probably wouldn't have been able to acquire near as many properties.
For somebody that's looking at you today, that they're seeing a guy that has a really big rental portfolio. Was that your plan from the beginning to buy a lot of rental properties?
Well, I guess I can't say I planned it. I just started in my early 20s, and looking back now, you would have to consider that old school. I bought my first place in 1978, and I just started accumulating properties as they were affordable and as I could find the deals. And then you get many years later and you realize you've just kind of added a little bit at a time on top of a little bit at a time. And all of a sudden you've got a real nice, cash flowing rental property business.
So it was really just kind of organic. This was something you did on the side where you were buying one or two properties here and there, but over time, things just basically compounded.
Yeah, that's right. I can't say that, back in that time period, I had set out to own any particular number of units. I had just decided early on that I wanted to own rental property. I literally made this decision when I was in junior high school, and they built some rental units, some townhouses on my paper route, and I kind of did the math and thought, well, this would be a great way to make money in addition to the other things that I had planned to do, as a career.
Right.
And I just, educated myself with books and tape courses and so on that condensed down. And after listening to them over and over, and developing some strategies that I thought that I could use in our market here, and acquired properties as the occasions presented themselves, without a particular goal of a certain number of units or even a certain amount of income. The goal was to make sensible investments and not rush and do things that might hurt me later, make bad investments just to say that I had a certain number of units. Didn't want to do that.
Right. Yeah. I love that because I feel like a lot of people are in that same situation where they're maybe just getting started. Maybe they have a rental or two, and they look at someone that's been doing this for a long time and they think, I can never get to where they are. But you got there just by working on this slowly as you had a full-time job.
Right. I actually had another career that was also a passion for me. I was a professional mobile disc jockey for 35 years. I was the first one to do that full-time professionally in this part of the country, starting in 1976. And I did that for 35 years, 5,051 appearances. And wow. I had as much of a passion for that as I did for my rental property activities. And I think that that's totally okay. I don't think that somebody has to go into this with the idea that, gosh, it's an either or thing. It's either I work like crazy just to have enough rental properties that's the only thing I do, or I don't do it at all. No, it can be both. If you happen to be involved in a career or a job that interests you, or that you have a passion for, or you have some other reason to stay involved with, you can still continue growing your portfolio outside of that. And in my case, I retired from the mobile DJ business 9 years ago, and got to that point, when I knew it was time to end that. But at that time, then I had this rental property portfolio built up that I could survive on that income. And in fact, we've bought our nicest properties in the past 9 years because I had more money and more time from not being involved with another profession to put into the whole real estate thing. We also flip houses, I might add. Been doing that for about 30 years, since before flip was a real estate term. And we do about 2 to 5 of those a year.
Joel, you've got a really great story. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing it. Your story is old school, but it still works today. I mean, basically, you bought a property or two a year. You reinvested your cash flow into buying more properties and to paying off mortgages. Over time, your portfolio just compounded. You built up more and more cash flow. You were able to pay everything off. And now, after 42 years, you're able to enjoy the fruits of your sacrifice and your hard work. And congratulations. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. If anybody is in Erie, Pennsylvania, and you're doing flips and you're looking for short-term funding to buy a property and fix it up, Joel also does some hard money lending, and he would love to talk to you to see if maybe there's a good opportunity for you guys to work together. If you want to reach Joel, you can find him at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 277. I'd like to thank today's sponsor for making this episode possible. It's Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. Chaley is a nationwide lender, and she specializes in helping investors buy rental properties. So whether you're looking to buy your very first property, or you've got a big portfolio and you want to add a new rental, or even if you want to refi, the lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge. She has a ton of different loan programs, and she can find something that'll work for you. If you want to find out more or set up a time to talk to Chaley, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com. If you mention Rental Income Podcast, she will waive all the pre-qualification fees. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe, and you'll get notified as soon as we release a new episode. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.